Chapter 28. The Bus Ride to Yesterday. I had never seen my father act before, and I was very excited about the prospect. He had acted as a young man with theater companies in and around Boston, particularly the West End Playhouse. We have pictures of him as Benjamin Disraeli, Queen Victoria's Prime Minister, in a play about his life. There's a truly striking resemblance between the real man and my father, made up in costume to look like him. My father wanted to become an actor. Apparently he had the instinct and the talent, but he was discouraged by his parents, who were concerned about his making a living, and he went to law school instead. He attended Northeastern, which at the time was a poor substitute for Harvard, where his brother Fred had been awarded a scholarship. Northeastern later achieved a fine reputation, which pleased my father greatly. In one of our old family albums are surprising pictures of my mother on stage and in costume. I'm sure she was self-conscious, but apparently played an occasional small part to be near my father when he rehearsed or performed. And, I'm certain, to keep an eye on him around the nubile ingenues. My father was always quite dashing, in or out of character. In his prime, he was sometimes mistaken for the movie star William Powell, who, among many other roles, played Nick Charles, the husband in the Thin Man series. My father loved to tell about attending Friday night services and spotting two women staring at him. He heard one whisper, "Look, it's William Powell," and the other replied, "I didn't know he was Jewish." After law school, my father made occasional forays into private practice and ultimately became an administrative law judge. He didn't act again for many years, until after he and my mother retired to Palm Springs in their 70s. My dad loved it there, became active in local politics, and performed with a little theater company. He was written up in Palm Springs Life magazine, accompanied by a flattering picture, was reviewed in the local paper, the Desert Sun, and interviewed on radio. I know he must have loved all that attention. We were always in touch with each other once or twice a week, and in due course, we learned that Dad was going to play a very good supporting role in a local revival of Death Takes a Holiday. It was my wife Deborah's idea, I think, to charter a bus, fill it with friends, drive down to the Springs, and surprise my father. Finally, after savoring all of his anecdotes through the years and poring over the faded album pictures and the programs with his name, I'd be able to see him perform. The arrangements were complex: whom to invite, how and where to pick them up, how to deal with the theater company's management, how to keep it all secret. We decided to let my mother know, and she was thrilled with the idea, but couldn't resist commenting on how much it was going to cost. I got in touch with the company manager and swore him to secrecy, telling him I'd be sending a check to reserve half the house on a date we agreed to. He was almost as thrilled as my mother, a guarantee of warm bodies and 40 seats. Meanwhile, Deborah made arrangements with the bus company. We could have either freezer chests for champagne or a piano on the bus. We went for the champagne. The list of friends we contacted included everyone we felt especially close to, who knew my father and mother personally, from get-togethers and parties at our home. Every one of them was responsive and excited, as were our 3 daughters and a couple of their friends. Although we gave them plenty of notice, some had to cancel earlier plans, which they did with alacrity. Deborah had selected 3 pickup sites, 2 in the San Fernando Valley and 1 in West LA. Our bus driver's name was Porky, which was most appropriate, and the appointed hour, there he was, driving this huge bus into the supermarket parking lot where we waited with the first group. Everyone's spirits were high. They all lent themselves to the occasion by bringing picnic food, beer, blankets, a guitar. It promised to be a great day. I remember how touched I was when I saw our closest friends waiting at each stop with their paraphernalia, having dropped everything to honor my father in this way. But there was a complication. My brother Roy was waiting with one group, having flown in from Paris to surprise us. Since the bus was already loaded to capacity, Roy had to sit on the toilet, except when someone needed to use it. We sang and laughed and drank. My future son-in-law, Tom Alfieri, did most of the pouring. Drank our way to Reading, where we stopped for dinner by prearrangement. The restaurant manager seemed stunned, nevertheless, when all 40 of us trooped in at once. Porky joined us, and I suspect we were one of the more raucous groups he'd ever chauffeured. My father and mother lived in a very nice condo development at the edge of Palm Springs. Because it was vintage, the units were nicely separated, with lots of green space between them. But the entrance was narrow, with grassy island dividing it. We sat on the bus holding our breath as Porky navigated the behemoth onto the complex and up to the front of my folks' place, backing and forthing with dexterity. My Uncle Mickey and Aunt Sarah were visiting, but only my mother came out when the bus arrived, along with most of her neighbors. Everyone got off the bus and greeted my mother effusively. She was nearly overcome with emotion, although she'd been given ample warning. The neighbors acutely applauded as my mother boarded the bus. Uncle Mickey wasn't feeling well, and Sarah refused to come without him. I never quite forgave her for missing her brother's big theatrical moment. We filled into our theater seats with much decorum as we could muster, hopeful that my father would not recognize a loud, familiar voice if he had heard it from backstage. And then the curtain rose, and there he was, looking completely handsome, calm and relaxed on the stage, and reciting his lines to perfection. Our great and good friend Harry Longstreet spent the entire performance in the aisle on his knees, snapping pictures of the proceedings, particularly the scenes that my father was in. Afterwards, as we made our way to the green room, Harry could barely walk. The director had agreed to stall the cast backstage for a few minutes, then summoned them into the green room for notes. Our entire busload was there, including my brother, together with what was left of the champagne, which we had stashed in iced trash baskets. Soon the cast drifted in, with my father detained for last, and the room erupted in applause and cheers. Dad spotted my brother Roy first and demanded to know what he was doing there. I think he said characteristically, "Is everything all right at home?" Then he became aware of the rest of us, recognizing everyone and greeting them by name with affectionate hugs. Watching with Deborah and my mother, who was in tears, I heard him mention that during the performance that evening, he'd wondered why the audience was responding with such extraordinary enthusiasm. It was truly a great day, a great evening, and a memorable night. The bus ride home was somewhat subdued. Everyone was basking in the glow of fellowship and sentiment. But there were still a few soft songs, even when we stopped late at a roadside stand for ice cream. For months, even years afterwards, our friends talked about that bus ride, the play, and how much fun it all was. Of course, my family and I will never forget it. And I often wonder, as I remember my father's performance, if he was living his entire actor's life on the stage that night, and if our applause was enough to nourish and sustain him.